Sandy, this meeting has been recorded by the host or participant. No way. I'm leaving. I've been to Romamoo, I've been to BJ. I searched all over for a place to pray. I found the mosh pit and knew that this was it. I am a moshnik and I'm here to stay. And I'm turning gray. And now Judith is here. Let's have a beer. Roxanne's here too. Let's raise a glass to you. And Susan's here. Oh, you're such a dear. And here I am too. Okay, it's enough of that. I can go on all day. All right, welcome everybody. We are the mighty and we are the few. We're the Methodists and we are the Jews. I thought I'd get a kick out of that, Bruce. So clearly, who cares about getting together with the rabbi? Let's see, is anybody on my second screen? No, it says there's 10 people here, but who are they? Oh, God, let me just open this. Let me see. Let me open up the chat. Oh, no, participants. Oh, so Judith is hiding and Renee is hiding too. And who else is here? I'm working on 2 computers here because I know one is a little bit more stable than another one. See, and now Sandy's on the phone. Doesn't matter what I'm going to say. So this evening, I thought it would be fun to schmooze with the rabbi. And as soon as he gets here, we're going to start. But more importantly, all the mishigash aside, I wanted to share a little bit about what makes me me. And in order to do that, I'm drawing upon my favorite rabbi, who is Rabbi Rami Shapiro. And this is a little known book called Minyan, which is interesting because we are Minyan Oneg Shabbat. As you all know, a Minyan is 10, it's a quorum of 10, at least 10 folks to be able to say certain prayers. But this book is not about that. This book is a book that he wrote while he was still a congregational rabbi after a certain amount of time, that he realized that he could actually articulate the things that he wanted to build his community on. And as I read the book, it's more and more echoing who we are and what we're basing our community on. And I want to share some of those things with you. And then in this book too, because we just kind of covered the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 utterances, otherwise known as the 10 Commandments, this past Shabbat, his unpacking of those 10 are just fantastic. And so I wanted to share this with you as well. As always, if you have any questions or comments, just stop me way frantically or throw your, hey, Alessandra, or throw your arms up in the air like Bruce and Alessandra just did, and you'll grab my attention because this is very informal, as it usually is Wednesday nights, but tonight's perhaps even more informal than most. You might recall me telling the story many, 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 many times when Rami Shapiro, in a final paper that he wrote, was called into the office, not of Scott Ryder, but of his DOS, Director of Studies, who had something very important to share with not yet Rabbi Rami Shapiro. Now, I actually finally remembered where that story is from. Where is the story from? It's from this book. And so I got the story a little bit wrong because it wasn't by way of a final paper that he wrote, but it was by a sermon that he gave while he was still a student in the rabbinical program at the Hebrew Union College, which of course is the Reform movement. So here's what it says. I delivered a sermon on the necessary unity of God, women, man, and nature. Immediately after the service, I was called into the office of the chairman of the philosophy department for a scholarly reprimand. referring to my position that God and creation are one, the chairman said, "You, sir, are a megalomaniac." To which Reb Rami, or not yet Erev Reb Rami, replied, "With all due respect, Rabbi, you are wrong. If I understand the term correctly, a megalomaniac thinks he is God. I, on the other hand, know that I am God." Well, I absolutely love that because all the things I'm going to be sharing with you are going to be my jealousy is on display, that someone can actually say everything that I believe, everything I sense to be true in a way that is both accessible and that gets my heart racing with joy and excitement. So he goes on to say, and I'm going to be reading from this book for a little bit. What I mean to convey was my deep conviction that God is not something or someone living somewhere in and out of space and time. To me, God is the one who manifests as all things in time and space. God is not something you pray to, but rather the greater reality to which you awake. I'm going to repeat that because that's really beautiful. God is not something you pray to, but rather the greater reality to which you awake. You know, this is Moshe talk, is it not? This is what we work on in our spiritual practices in order to refine our antennae so that we are keenly aware when we are awake and when we are not so much awake. So continuing, Rami says, this is the single point my rabbinate aims to teach. It's like, again, remember I said, he speaks for me. God is the source and substance of all reality, and God is experientially knowable. Now, if you're taking notes tonight, they're going to come in handy for the breakthrough rooms this Shabbat, because we're going to be delving into personal theology this Shabbos in the breakthrough rooms, and what our individual and collective sense of what this G word means. And of course, the G word is just a 3-letter word in English, has nothing to do with Yud Hey Vav Hey. But I continue. I do not believe that in God as an abstract idea. I experience God as a palpable reality. I know this sounds strange coming from a rabbi. I don't know what he means by that. That seems like a little put down, actually, to other rabbis, but I'm going to take it at face value. So, Sandy, you have something that you wanted to say? Okay.
No, I'm just with you with Rami. I remember him during that period of time.
Okay, great. It is not unique to me. Rabbi Yitzchak Epstein of Chomel wrote to a Jewish friend who questioned the authenticity of this non-dual understanding. And here's the letter. Listen, please, my beloved friend, do not say that what I am about to say is, God forbid, heresy or philosophy. After doing all the goodly meditations while reciting the songs of praise and the Shema, it is sensed that, as we say in Yiddish, alles ist Gott, all is God. So I'm recalling a class in Hasidic thought that I took as part of the rabbinic program years ago. And the question that the teacher began with is, what is the basis of Hasidic thought? And my head shut up and go, ooh, ooh, ooh. I think I know the answer to that. And so he called on me. I didn't go, ooh, ooh, by the way. And I said, Moloch ha'aretz kavodo. He said, bingo. The entire earth is filled with the divine presence. Is that not right, Ellen Weaver? I knew that you would. You didn't think I noticed you sneak in the back door after class started. Did you bring a pass? But yeah, Moloch ha'aretz kavodo, meaning that there is nothing outside of God, that everything is within. Kolbo. I often cite a line from mystical thought. Mimali kol olmim, v'sovev kol olmim, meaning that divine presence, divinity, God, call it, Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, fills all creation, right? V'sovev, like misaviv, like a dreidel. It goes around, it encompasses, it surrounds all creation. So if it's within all creation and surrounds all creation, there's no place that is not God, which is why one of God's names is Makom, which means place. All is God. I continue, R Rami. Jewish spiritual practice does not supplant the self with the one, but awakens the self to its inseparability from the one. Right? So we're not looking to sit on some mountaintop, and meditating with our, with our legs crossed, but rather live in this world with, in a Shiviti pose, meaning that we're always aware that God is infused in everything, and thus we will behave as if being seen all the time. And that, if I'm remembering correctly, Reb Zalman, alav shalom, reminds us that this idea of yira, right, of what sometimes translated as fear, and oftentimes translated as awe, it contains the same shoresh as to be seen or to see, ro'eh, lirot. So if we lived our lives as if we were seen all the time, how differently would our behavior be? He's quoting now Rabbi Aharon Halevi Horowitz. This is Reb Shneur Zalman, the founder of the writer of the Tanya and of Chabad. God's only desire is to reveal unity through diversity. God's only desire is to reveal unity through diversity. Welcome, Gail. Right? So remember, another name for divinity is Adonai Tzavaot. Right? What I love where Zalman would unpack this as the God of diversity, right? The God of many colors, just like that coat. That is to reveal that all of reality is unique in all of its levels and details, and nevertheless united in a fundamental oneness. The main point of creation is, drumroll, somebody. The main point of creation is, drumroll, somebody.
Praise God. So that God should know God's self.
Yes, and to reveal the wholeness of God from the opposite perspective. It is the nature of completeness to include all opposites in the one. When I moved to Washington, D.C., I moved to D.C. to join a theater company called Living Stage Theater Company, whose mission in a nutshell was to change the world. It wasn't until I really began studying all of this in earnest that I understood what my theater director, who though Jewish was as not Jewish as one can be, but still having been born Jewish, always said that contained in everything is its opposite. He didn't study Kabbalah. He just sensed the truth of this, right? And so it took until, quotes like this from the Lubavitcher Rebbe's disciple to truly and deeply understand what he was talking about. Alrighty, I'm going to stop here for a moment because we're making our way quickly to the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments, as unpacked by Reb Rami. This is a follow-up, of course, to our Shabbos discussion, and also the listing of the 10 Commandments. If you remember, we actually accomplished that in order after a while. So I'm going to take a deep breath. Anybody have any questions, comments, reflections on anything that I have offered up to now? No. Okay. If not, let's review. What is the very first of the utterances? Does anybody remember from the other day? Bruce.
There is only one God.
I am God. Anochi. I am. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So here is Rami's unpacking of it. It's going to hopefully blow your mind like it did me, because for me, this is something I can work with. Yud He Vav He, the unnamed and unnameable reality, is God, the source and substance of all being and becoming. That's his first of the commandments. And now his commentary. Aware that the ego forever creates gods in its own image for its own profit, I vow to recognize all ideas about God as products of human culture bound by history and circumstance, and forever incapable of defining and describing the reality beyond naming. You get that? We can sense it and be in relationship, but don't try to, well, we're getting to that. Don't try to number 2, which is what? What are we not supposed to do?
Make false images. Make false.
Yes, to make any images. Make a graven image. Why? Because in bold, he says, number 2, Yud He Vav He cannot be imagined and must not be imaged. Here's his commentary. Aware of the suffering caused by allegiance to dogma and creed, I vow never to make idols of ideas or to mistake any ism for the is. All religions are false insofar as they claim to be true. All religions are true insofar as they recognize and admit being false. I vow to practice meditation as a means of emptying the mind of thought and image and thereby awakening to God. Because the mind is subject to error, illusion, prejudice, pride, and politics. So don't make an image, and as also can be understood as, because everything is an image of God. So don't make one thing an image of God, right? Because there go your eyes. Squirrel, there's God over there. But if you say there's God over there and there and there and there, and right there where you're sitting, now you're on the right track. Number 3, what is the third of the Aseret Hadibrot? It's something about speech. Come on, third. Yeah, you can computers in front of you. You can cheat. What, Bruce?
Don't use the name of the Lord in vain.
Exactly. Don't use Yud He Vav He, God's name, in vain. Now listen to the way Rami understands it in bold. Do not misuse religion or spirituality by taking God in vain. Here's his unpacking. Aware of the suffering caused by the misuse of God and religion in the quest for power, I vow never to mistake my path as the path, my truth as the truth, my idea of God as God. Yud He Vav He, reality, but to surrender my opinion to the greater unknowing that is the one beyond knowing. This, as my mashpia, Estelle Frankel, reminds us, is the wisdom of not knowing, or the wisdom of uncertainty. What's number 4? Shamor v'zachor v'dibor. Come on.
And keep Shabbat.
You got it.
Shabbat,
Right.
yeah.
Remember the Sabbath? And then it says, right, to the show, to keep it holy. how he understands holiness is to set it apart. So here's his commentary. Aware of the suffering caused, are you picking up on the theme here? Caused by unmindful living, I vow to cultivate Shabbat as a weekly day of mindfulness and attention, setting it aside for rest, renewal, reflection, and recreation. I vow to cultivate the Sabbaths of the seventh year and the 7 cycles of years. On the sabbatical year, I vow to rethink my priorities and reassess the decisions I have made that have brought me to this place in my life. All right, we're up to number 5. What's the 5th on that one side of the column?
Honor your father and mother.
There you go. Honor your mother and your father. This is a difficult one if we have had hard relationships with either one or both of our parents. And here's what R Rami offers. Aware of the suffering caused by old age, illness, and death, I vow to care for my parents to the best of my ability. Recognizing that no parent is perfect, I acknowledge the sacrifices that were made on my behalf and the role my own behavior played and continues to play in my family's evolution. I vow to cultivate reconciliation with my parents and to merit their respect by living according to the highest that is in me. I vow to promote the well-being of all elderly people. Hey, that's almost me. Doing what I can to honor and respect both aging and the aged, and seeing in the old a repository of wisdom and experience necessary for right living and a healthy and honorable society. Do I get an amen to that? You know, there's a Native American saying that when an elder dies, it's like an entire library has burnt down to the ground. I always find that very powerful. Number 6, now we're getting to those mitzvot, Bein Adam v'Chavero. Up to now, we've had Bein Makom v'Adam, which means between Makom, another name for God, and men and women. And now we're going to the one, Bein Adam v'Chavero, between each of us, you know, the interrelational mitzvot. What is number 6? What are we not supposed to do?
Kill.
Yeah, well, actually murder.
Murder.
Sorry, I was just listening to murder. It's just a shot away. It's just a shot away. Sorry, Judith, yeah. Okay, never mind. Oh, do not murder. How can I go off onto that and now say this? So here's R Rami's comment. Again, aware of the suffering. You can see R Rami's coming to this from a very Buddhist lens, right? Talking about how we can alleviate suffering both between us, but for ourselves as well, and entire society, of course. Awaring of the suffering caused by the needless and wanton destruction of life, I vow to cultivate compassion and justice and learn ways to protect the well-being of people, animals, plants, and minerals. He's taken this several steps further, is he not? I am determined not to murder, not to let others murder, and not condone any act of murder in the world, in my thinking, and in my way of life. I recognize that murder refers not only to the literal taking of life, but to the killing of dignity. I vow to practice gentleness and respect toward all, learning how to struggle for what is right without falling prey to what is wrong. So we recall that in Elliot, welcome Elliot, that in Pirkei Avot, it says something like, I wish I can remember exactly, but it's about a person's good name. Right? That is the one thing that you can't get back. So I think that's what he's talking about here. You can actually murder someone through words and by speaking of them in ways that destroy their reputations. All right, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 4 more to go. Elliot, we're on the Aseret HaDibrot. This is kind of like a recap of the last Shabbos, but now through the eyes of Rami Shapiro, my Rebbe, who I've never met. Number 7, do not what?
Commit adultery.
Yeah. So, but that's not how he sees it. Do not engage in sexual misconduct. It's kind of a broader lens he's putting on this, right? Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I vow to cultivate sexual responsibility and not engage in sexual relations without compassion and commitment. I am determined to respect my commitments and the commitments of others. I will do everything in my power to protect children and adults from sexual abuse and to eliminate sexually transmitted disease. I vow to honor my body and the bodies of others by treating all beings with respect and dignity. I vow to hallow pleasure in the senses by seeing the wonder of life within and around me. And I vow to uphold the holiness of sexuality by never degrading it myself or another through violence, ignorance, or deceit. So again, I love what he is doing here, which is not only unpacking what the original intent, but embedding that in a much more moachin de gadlut, a much more expanded consciousness. Brings us to number 8. Do not I've got all night.
Do not steal.
Thank you. I don't know who that was. Ellen, thank you, Ellen.
And it has a lot to do with no kidnapping.
Do not steal. Again, how is he going to begin this sentence? How is unpacking? Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, theft, oppression. I vow to practice acts of loving kindness toward all things. I vow to practice generosity by sharing my time, energy, and material resources with those in need. I vow not to steal or keep anything that should belong to others. I'll respect the property of others, yet work for the wise use of all earthly resources. 2 more to go. Number 9.
Do not covet.
We had that already. Oh, no, that's 10. Sorry. That's 10.
Okay.
That's 10. Thank you, Gail. I'll call on you next time. It'll be an easy one for you. What's number 9? Do not
Gossip, lie.
lie. That's right. Aware of the suffering caused by wrongful speech and shallow listening, I vow to cultivate compassionate speech and attentive listening. I vow to speak truthfully with words that inspire self-confidence, joy, compassion, justice, and hope. Oy, halavai, if only it were so. I am determined not to spread news that I don't know to be certain, or to share information that will cause needless harm. I vow not to criticize or condemn things of which I am not sure, and to cultivate an open mind. And I will make every effort to reconcile differences peacefully and compassionately and resolve all conflicts, however small. You know, this is a biggie as far as Lashon Hara, in using our speech to sometimes destroy other people or speak badly. I know I've mentioned this before, but it always bears repeating that years ago, Renee and I attended Shabbos services at Lincoln Square Synagogue in Manhattan. And the rabbi had been doing a series of talks of Divrei Torah on Lashon Hara, of speaking, of using our speech wisely and with intentionality. And the day that we were there, basically it was clear that what he was saying, you shouldn't even talk about something if it's true, because talking about other people is a slippery slope. And what Renee and I carried away from that Devar Torah that day is, then what will we talk about? Right? Like, what do we do? And Renee likes to quote, what's his name? The Israeli Renee, you there? Of that civilization and the human beings that inhabit it, we have progressed because of gossip. meaning because of the stories that we tell about where we've come from and about each other as well. Renee, who is that I'm talking about? Yuval, you're muted.
Halevi.
Renee, you're muted. That's okay. Okay, you put in the chat. Did you say it, Elliot?
I think it's Halevi.
His name is Harari. Yuval
Harari.
Yuval Harari, I think, right?
Yeah.
So there we go. Which brings us to the last, but not last, of the 364 mitzvot, and the last one of we're covering of the Aseret HaDibrot is do not. Gail Garland, do not what?
Covet.
Covet. That's right.
Envy, the envy.
And I know you're getting tired of me saying this, but I'll say it one last time. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful consumption. I vow to cultivate ethical eating. Where does he get that from? From do not covet. I vow to cultivate ethical eating, drinking, consuming to promote both personal and planetary well-being. I vow to simply live simply, to enjoy what I have before seeking to have more, and to labor from that which I desire honestly and justly. I vow to honor the differing gifts of people and to respect the property of others, seeing in another's success inspirational lessons from my own efforts. Which is also why the rabbis teach do not covet, but jealousy can be a positive force to propel us to learn more, to become more of ourselves as we are inspired by others being themselves and sharing their wisdom, knowledge, and their skills with us. I think I took a breath during all of that. So that leads us to any comments, anything you want to share. Like I said, I really wanted to read this tonight to share with you one of my Rebbes and where I come from. And if it hasn't already been obvious, you know, in the 3.5 years that all of us or most of us have been together, that he speaks for everything he says. Me too, right? That Reb Rami speaks for me, which is why I love to read him and to quote him and to listen to him. He has a podcast as well. Any reflections, or then we can move to the, you know, schmoozing part of the night. Yeah, I did intend to ask the rabbi, which means in its greatest expansive way, that you can ask me any question that you would like. If I don't know, I'm going to be honest about that, or I'll make up an answer. And it could be, you know, personal questions too. But if I don't want to answer them, I won't answer them. We'll just say move on. Bruce Lund, you had your hand up, Bruce.
You or someone at Mosh introduced me to Rabbi Rami Shapiro, and I've read this book, The Art of Loving Kindness, and it has really, you know, when you say change your life, I mean, that's almost a little too much sometimes, but he has really influenced me a great deal. And this is the only thing I've read of him. I've heard him speak before, not in person, but through a program of one kind or another, and I've really been taken by him. So he introduced me to many things that I already felt were inside of me, but he was able to put into words that helped capture me in a way. So I thank you for Rami Shapiro.
You're welcome, Bruce. If I'm not mistaken, the story goes that Rami had already written a lot of books. He had been the rabbi at, you know, a congregation in Florida, and he went to Reb Zalman to ask Reb Zalman what Reb Zalman thought his next part of his deployment should be. And Reb Zalman's answer to Rami was to do deep ecumenical work. And so that's when he moved into to work that really spoke to that book that you just held up, Bruce, was one of the early books that he wrote. You know how he brings in the wisdom of so many faiths, and as well as spiritual practices. So that was like the next step. And now I'm trying to remember the name of his podcast. I want to say it. I just want to find it because it's on my podcast list. It's called Spirituality and Health Magazine. So if you look up spirituality and health, you'll find Reb Rami interviewing people from like all walks of life on the most interesting subjects, in ways, of course, that only he can. So Spirituality and Health is the name of the podcast, Spirituality and Health with Rabbi Rami. Ellen, did you have your hand up? Okay. All righty. So if you don't have any questions, it's going to be an early night, which is fine because I haven't had dinner yet. But let's get some conversation going. Miriam, start us off. And Miriam, can you show everybody this piece of beautiful artwork that you're completing?
Sure, I'm done. I've finished it.
And tell us what the how that came to be.
Well, at the Kala, I took a class on paper cutting, and I made one of these for myself. And then somebody saw it, and she asked me to make her one. So this is the one I made for her, and I just finished it, and I'll put it in the mail tomorrow.
Wow, fantastic. And at next year's in-person retreat, Miriam's original paper cut will start at $360. Go ahead, Miriam.
Well, actually, I don't have a question, but I have a request that, so today is on the secular calendar is the anniversary of my nephew Sean died on August 2nd.
I'm sorry.
So just would like to say Kaddish if we could.
Absolutely. We will do that before we sign off.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. So, any questions? Or if you don't have any questions, so I was also going to fill you all in on where we are. This is not the State of the Minyan address, but Devorah is saving me.
Okay, I have a question. It's a two-part question.
Uh-oh.
I would like to know why you became a rabbi and when you knew you wanted to be a rabbi.
Thank you. So I'm still not sure I want to be a rabbi. But
you're grown up.
I go by Reb Zalman's understanding that, hey, Dan Glazer's here, that when that being a rabbi is a role that I sometimes play. Truthfully and honestly and seriously, I never set out to become a rabbi. Even when I entered the rabbinical program, I knew that was at the other end of the journey if I completed. But the very first time I met Reb Daniel, and I shared the story when he was here last month at Ohala at the Convention for Unconventional Rabbis. What I shared with him was that being a rabbi was not really that wasn't the top of the list for me. It really was to study in a disciplined manner. That's really what I wanted to do because I've been just like taking classes here and there for many years, and then of course Renee gave me the famous Renee Eitza, the famous Renee advice, which was when I said to her, "Yeah, but I'm not going to be. I'm going to be 60 years old when I become a rabbi."
And I said, you're going to be 60-year-olds anyway. You might as well also be a rabbi.
You're going to be 60 years old anyway. You might as well be 60 and a rabbi. So here I am. So, Devorah, truthfully, I applied to the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College in 1993, and I got in. I wasn't sure why I wanted to go, except for what I said at my interview. And at my interview was Rabbi Art Green. At my interview was rabbinical student Layla Galberner and several other people. And at my interview, what I said was, being a rabbi is not that all important to me. I want to know God. I was accepted, and for a variety of reasons, I decided not to go. But Layla, in subsequent years, many years later, when I met her, shared with me that in the discussion following my interview, it was agreed that they would accept me, but it was also agreed that if I came, I wouldn't last very long. That RRC was not the place that I was going to, quote unquote, find God, to develop a relationship with divinity. And then, of course, I met the Aleph folk, and that was history. Because there I can do that. So I hope that's a satisfying answer, Devorah, but I'm not sure it was what you were looking for. But we all have our own reasons for, taking the paths that we take. And I actually was considering in the when was that? Oh, I remember we were sitting on our porch, Renee, that Bob Sachs came over. Rabbi Bob Sachs, Scott knows Rabbi Sachs. And because I was considering going to cantorial school at JTS. And I really wanted his opinion. And what he said to me sitting on that porch was, no, don't do it. They'll suck every ounce of joy from you imaginable. I didn't go. But that was Rabbi Bob Sachs' advice. And I'm glad I didn't go to JTS. I went to JTS years later with Renee to teach a class of storytelling. That was very joyous. Ma'od, what else?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ask me next week. I'll have a different answer. All right, if you're not going to ask me a question, do I have to see the same hands all over again? Devorah Lesk.
I'll use the other hand. Okay. This is a very, probably very unusual question, but there are times when the sad events that we are commemorating, the cycle of things that we're doing, feel too overwhelming to actually dive into it. And how does one navigate calendar when one's personal rhythm can't sustain what's going on around us?
Yeah. To everything, right? There is a season. The Jewish calendar invites us to ride the waves of the calendar. If we reach a place in the calendar that we, for whatever personal reasons, cannot engage with, that's called self-care, right? You're talking, I assume, about Tisha B'Av, which is most recently.
Recently, yeah.
Yeah. But Tisha B'Av, what is it? It's an opportunity for us to have a day where we can really give in to all of the travails of our people. And where it's kind of sanctioned and it's okay to do that publicly, and take that deep dive into that as being a fast day. To be honest with you, for different reasons, I did not participate in Tisha B'Av this year. Why? my grandchildren were visiting. And the joy that I knew that I didn't, and I couldn't go there. So I knew that I would, and I did find another opportunity to kind of a mini morning period. And remember that in our daily davening, there's an opportunity to put our hands on our, on our forehead and go, "Oy," So Devorah, I think that most importantly, and I don't know if you're feeling this, but we shouldn't feel guilty about not participating in the sanctioned dates that our calendars have laid out for us, but to take advantage of them as much as we possibly can, because the cycle of the Jewish year is absolutely brilliant, as we know, right? So, one of my spiritual practices is to say Dayenu. And what do I mean by that? If only I had, allowed Shabbat to enter into me, and I took the day for replenishment and all the other R's that R Rami laid up, Dayenu. If I had entered into Shabbat and began Friday night with friends over Shabbos dinner and we sang Zmiras, Dayenu. If my friends came over and we sang Zmirot and had a wonderful dinner and there was a lot of joy in the house and someone revealed something about themselves that I never knew, or there was a fantastic conversation, Dayenu. So I have a Dayenu practice. And that's kind of cyclical too, for those of you who don't know what Dayenu means. It's enough, right? It would be enough if this, and there would be enough if this and that. There'd be enough of this and that and that. So we find other cyclical ways of articulating our Jewish yearning and longing. And on Tisha B'Av, it's a way to be together in our grief. So having a conversation before about loneliness and how there's a lot of discussions about loneliness now, and it being really a disease of these times. It's not the same as being alone, right? But real loneliness. And maybe there should be a holy day, to commemorate that, where we can, pull out Jewish texts or other texts as well, and see each other and understand and hold each other. So, Tisha B'Av, again, you did self-care. On the other side, there's an opportunity to hold each other and be held on that day, right? So I've always had, long ago, I had issues with Tisha B'Av that I didn't want to participate in it, like enough with the oi. But I've come to understand it as something much, much different than being despondent about what was and the possibilities. Yes. But thank you. That's a very challenging question for us all. Hey, Dan.
Thank you.
Hi.
And then Gail.
Ellen is first.
Okay, Ellen, Dan, and then Gail.
I think it's a wonderful question, and I love what you said, Mark. And one of the things that, I tend to get overwhelmed in Tishrei with its endlessness, but the month of Av is fully called Menachem Av the Comforter. And for quite a few years, I've understood that as there's a safety net in that first 9 days of Av that's provided so that if we choose that year to make that journey down into the depths of the loss and despair, that there's a safety net so that we don't have to worry about coming back up.
and also that the afternoon of Tisha B'Av, it's like the messianic consciousness births again in a really wonderful way, which leads us to today and Tu B'Av, which is really a day honoring love and all the different kinds of expressions of love, and sharing things the way the women of the first temple would do, sharing white clothing and dancing. But that moon last night, astonishing. I was coming back from doing a little Shloshim gathering for a good friend's father. And when I turned a corner, that moon was unbelievable. And I thought, right, full moon, Tu B'Av, the journey sort of moving in different directions. And, you know, once we get to the new moon, well, Elul is a wonderful month. But once we start with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and then the 4 days of preparing for Sukkot, and I love Sukkot. It actually, Shmini Atzeret's probably my favorite holiday because it's such an intimate lift at the end. But it can get exhausting going through the whole of all of that and all of what that can offer in inspiring ways and challenging ways. So it's just, but I do love the Jewish calendar. And when I was first starting in 1992 at Rabbi Jonathan Kliegler's request, leading Rosh Chodesh in Woodstock, I started living inside the Jewish calendar, and it was absolutely amazing, like becoming more and more tuned. And I realized I have not been doing that now, but it was very potent. It was very important for me. Really, yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now.
Thank you, Ellen. One last thing about Tisha B'Av. You know, the phoenix rises out of the ashes. And so there's the understanding that the birth pangs of the Messiah rise from the desolation, right? Like, and there's a understanding Jewish mysticism in order Yerida the Aliyah. You know, you kind of sink, and then you need to fall in order to rise. And there's an amazing video. Some of you might have seen it about this. It's not about anything. It's to do with music. And this fellow, he walks up a flight of stairs. It's in the woods or something like that. And he falls, and he bounces back onto, Ellen, you know what I'm talking about, onto the stairs. I think I'll show it, you know, during Yamim Noraim, because it's so incredible and such a wonderful reminder of, you know, of falling in order to rise. That
you fall down, you get back up. You fall down, you get back up.
That's it. That's it. Dan, and then who was that, Gail?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just, in reference to the question about the comment about Tisha B'Av, yeah, everything that I read about it, and again, following up on what you just said, was that it's not about going down into the depths and wallowing. It's about holding that, acknowledging, learning about it, knowing about it, feeling it, but then coming through that to the other side with hope and opportunity and all that to come back up. So everything I read says that same message. It's not just about being down and staying down and feeling horrible all day. So for me, that's a very positive message with respect to that. I don't know, that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Dan. Gail.
Yeah, so I was at a meeting earlier this evening with the Jewish Advisory Council for Gilchrist Hospice. And of course, the rabbi there was talking about today being Tu B'Av, and it's Jewish Valentine's Day. So how he explained it in, of course, the white clothing. And so my question is kind of a simple one. How does Tisha B'Av relate, if at all, to Tu B'Av?
Well, certainly in the fact that after the desolation comes rebirth and renewal, right? And that, it's how it became, I don't recall if anybody has a better memory of us of how Tu B'Av came to be, but it was historically a day for young brides to find their beshert.
Right.
That's and for those matches to happen. So it is, I've heard it called the Jewish Valentine's Day. I'm not sure, that's a universal term for it at all.
Does it relate?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if I was on Facebook earlier today, and I couldn't help but notice several couples, Jewish couples, including Evan Leader, and I forget his wife's name, she's a rabbi, who are talking about how many years ago they proposed, to each other on Tu B'Av. So it's a day of proposing, and a lot of couples, mark that day, that was the day that, their love became, headed towards the chuppah.
Thank you.
Is there any relation with it to Lag BaOmer, which is also a day of joyousness, partying, and things like this in a month of quiet and all that?
Well, Lag BaOmer, according to tradition, marks the end of the plague of Rabbi Akiva's students, thousands of them who died. Who knows whether that's hyperbole or represents something different than quote unquote just the deaths. But I don't know any connection between Tisha B'Av and Lag BaOmer. No,
I don't think there
except
is.
for the fact that they both have dates.
Well, it's like Tu B'Shvat is the full moon of the month of Shvat, and Tu B'Av, the full moon of the month of Av. I mean, we were so much more an agricultural community when a lot of these things started. So, the whole Omer period was originally the spring harvest and then the summer harvest, but then things got added.
Yeah. We know how to add things into the Oxor and Sidor. We don't know how to take things out.
Right.
But for just so that for Bruce and Alessandra and Gail, that the word that like Lag BaOmer, we're just talking about, that Lag is a what do you call that? The chip. It's a date. Lamed meaning 30 and Gimel for 3. So it's a 33rd day of the counting of the Omer. So Lag BaOmer, that's what Lamed Gimel stands for. It's got Lamed with and then a Gimel. So Tu B'Shvat also is a date because it's got a Taf, Tate and then Vav. Maud, what else? Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. And the reason why I'm asking this question is because I need one or two more people to interview for the new improved Moshe website. Now, granted, most Moshniks have no idea that we even have a website, but the website that you have no idea exists is being reimagined and redone, hopefully by Rosh Hashanah, or certainly by then, hopefully maybe by the beginning of September, when there's going to be an article in Tablet magazine in which we're going to be mentioned. And so I'm hoping that we'll get mentioned, and then people will, hey, who are these people? And they'll find a new improved website. On this website, if you go to it, minyanonigshabbat.org, you're going to see the beginnings of a video. It's 60 seconds long that is Yael and David Sachs. No, sorry, Yael and Rick Stone, talking about Moshe. And why I need one or two more people, because I want one or two more voices. All right. So if that interests you, then let me know offline. But I'm interested here just to hear from you, because maybe I can get a quote. Because also on the new website, hopefully there's going to be places where people can click on your, if you're interested, image, and that your what you love about Moshe will pop up, or a little bit about you, so a little bit of biography of who you are, right? And so that other people can get to know us a little bit before they even put their toe into the water. Devorah Lesh, are you volunteering to be videoed?
No, she was just scratching her arm.
I already tried the video and I don't think that's my forte. But I can write something.
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to ask people to do, if you're interested, is to write something that if you look at, I got this answer, this idea, and which I stole from the Lab Shul, which, I think it was Mark Twain who famously said, when someone said that he was being plagiarized, he said, "Plagiarized? I steal from everybody." So in any case, why do you come? What did you find here? Like, what? I think everybody here, or most people, Alessandra, I think you're the newest Moshnik. Why do you keep coming? I can continually find this to be a miracle, what we've all created together. And, when you try to describe what we do and who we are, it's almost impossible. So in any case, I'm just curious as to, why do you come? Dan Glazer, I know you always have 2 shekels to put in.
Well, it's
I
about
can tell you
God.
why I keep coming.
You unmuted yourself, so I thought you had to.
No, Alessandra has something.
Oh, go ahead, Alessandra. Dan, for once in his life, is shy. Go ahead.
I keep coming because I feel that we really worship. In a lot of the services where we go, and as you know, Bruce is in a box in the 2 churches that and don't tell anybody, of course, but he has to say what he has to say, and that's great. People love it. But I feel that at Moshe, I really worship.
Wow.
And I feel welcome, and as you know, that's one of the best things that a human being can feel. So yeah, that's why I come back.
Beautiful. Wow. That's really, I find that very moving. Thank you. And how is that even possible? How do we do that? If you say how we really worship, I agree, totally agree. It's just really amazing. Ellen,
There's a real
wait, go ahead, Bruce. I'm sorry.
That's okay. There's a real balance between joyousness and dancing, and then being silent and contemplative, and so that's a lot of it, is that balance, because I think we need both. And we don't get both in various places. In some places you just get the one, but not the other.
Fantastic. Bruce and Alessandro, I'm going to be calling on you because you're on the video here. So I want to put those 2 things together in the video about the worshiping and what you just said, Bruce. Go ahead, Dan. And then I know Ellen had your hand up too.
Yeah. We go to a Reconstructionist synagogue, and even though our rabbis are towards the renewal side, it's heavy lifting moving the congregation to what I would say would be joy and heart and love. And So even though I love the people and there's a real sense of community and belonging, here there's more of a sense of joy. And although I wouldn't use the word worship, that's against my religion. I would, the joy and the love has meaning and a depth that for me is something that I know that I yearn for and need. And so I find that here. And so that's what's different for me. It's also different when I can see everybody's face. And you don't see, straight out eye contact, but you do see some. And but just seeing everybody's face and all that is very important for me.
Yeah.
And I feel belonging, and this feeds my yearning.
Thank you, Dan. Renee has said many times that she prefers this to sitting behind and looking at the backs of people, the backs of people's heads.
Well, I've told people at our synagogue that I would much prefer if we could circle up with the rabbis in the circle, not up on the bima. There's just a different feel.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the kind of service. Okay. But the circling up, there's just that sense of eye contact and community. Debarti.
Shamati. Al?
My experience is my experience is that you hold a lot of love and a deep kavanah, even when you're fooling around. And that transmits so that my worship is able to go as deep as I can, because you're not holding a boundary of how far we can go. You have just enormous space and kavanah and love and kindness and all that cool stuff. And it's not just only you, but what you provide then allows so many of us to go deeper and to care about each other. And yeah.
Thank you, Ellen. So I want to keep an eye on the time. Is anybody who hasn't had an opportunity to say anything like to offer anything? You don't need to. I grade on a curve. Gail?
Yeah, what I was going to share about my experience, and Roxanne, I'm sorry, I just saw you.
Oh, that's okay. Just very quickly, when Alessandra said to truly worship, I really connected to that, because I don't feel like I leave any part of myself behind, or like behind a door, like, I don't know. So when I'm doing things with Moshe, I am all there, and whoever I am is, I don't hide anything. So I think that being present makes me able to truly worship.
Mm.
No. And for me, I would say I really love that, Roxanne. And for me, it's not only the breadth, I mean, the creativity and joy and how you welcome each and every person. I mean, you recognize each of us as individuals. So you built this, we together built the community, and but you recognize each of us, and you're so joyous in welcoming us as individuals. And then it's, the tunes you use are varied, even though, the words are the same in the Siddur, and the order, of course, is changed, and that's wonderful. But it's not only the breadth and, what becomes serious one week and might have a different reflection another week. It's the depth and intimacy that have been created through the breakout rooms. And I think that's why, for me, that the retreat wasn't like I hadn't met people before, because it's like in these small groups that has truly built the little communities so that it's safe. It feels safe to me, to share really, deep feelings or thoughts, and to answer the questions and to reflect. And then you come back out and the joyous part, and then with the doggies, of course, my Emmett's on to the music now, and so he runs. So I can't show him all the time during a Donna Lum, but yeah, it's the breadth, and it's just so multidimensional. So I am so blessed. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail, so much. In a few moments, we'll have opportunity for Miriam and anyone else who wishes to say Kaddish to do so. The Kaddishim, plural for Kaddish, appears in various parts of the service as literally bookends. They're demarcation points that we're moving from something to something else, or that we're ending, we're completing a section of texts, of readings, of prayers. And there is a special Kaddish for scholars that is said after learning. But because it's filled with a very difficult to pronounce Aramaic, we're not going to say that. But we'll keep that in mind as we say that as Kaddish, not just being to remember those who have graced our lives and have moved on to a different sphere of existence, but also that we tonight have enriched each other through the things that we've shared, and the words of Rami Shapiro that have hopefully inspired and given us all a little bit more food for thought. Miriam, would you like to talk just for a moment about who you sing Kaddish for?
Sure, thanks. My nephew Sean, who was 38, he died 7 years ago. This is a picture of him with his mom, my sister, and it was really sad. He was really getting his life together in a good way. He was in a long-term relationship that looked like it was going to go, and yeah, it was really a tragic death. So he is missed. He had wonderful energy. He always he was a what do you call it? He was like a rapper, and he would organize big parties and be an MC. He was a big MC kind of guy in organized parties. And when they had his memorial, and his friends told stories about him that were things that, as family, as his aunt, I never saw those sides of him. And he was very beloved and had made a big difference in people's lives. So he's really missed. Thank you.
You're welcome. Zichrono livracha, may his memory be for a blessing.
So should I just go ahead?
Yeah. Yitkadal.
Anybody else sing Kaddish? Sandra?
I'm also saying Kaddish.
Would you also like?
I'm saying Kaddish for my niece who took her life a few months ago.
Oh.
May memory be for a blessing. Yitkadal. Shmei Rabbah.
Amen.
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 Shmei
Rabbah, Mevorach Leolam Almaya.
Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitpa'ar, Yitramam,
V'yitnaseh.
Vitadar, Vitala, Vitala, Shmei Kudusha, Kricha, Le'elam, Kol Birchata, B'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechamata, Damiram, B'yama, B'yama, Amen.
Amen.
Yehei
Shlama
Shlama
Rabba Min
Shemaya
V'chayim
V'chayim
Malenu
Kol Yisrael V'hu Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom
Shalom Bimromav,
Hu
Ya'aseh
Yaseh Shalom Aleinu
Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael, V'yal Kol Yoshvei Tevel.
Tevel.
Ve'al kol ha'olam. Amen.
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 And forgive me, but we also recognize that Renee is saying Kaddish for her father, Jonas,
Mhm.
and still in the 11 months / year of mourning. We're going to end with a nigun, but before we do, just to mention that you want to be here next Wednesday night, and I'll be putting that in the email and as well on Shabbos morning, because I'm going to be joined by Dan Arbel, who teaches, he's at American University. And Dan is, to say that he is versed in everything that's going on in Israel is a tremendous understatement. And while we do not usually here at Moshe go in that direction to talk about politics, I think this is really important for us to know as much about what's going on with with the judiciary and the democratia chants and slogans that are really threatening to undermine Israeli democracy. And it's an existential threat to Israel from within. And so if you want to learn more about that next week, I've invited Dan, and he very generously is going to be joining us next Wednesday night. This is a traditional Hasidic nigun. Ya 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 ya. Everybody, if I knew the way, I would take you home. Laila Tov, good night, everybody. Thank you so much. I love you all.
Laila Tov, everybody. Love you.
Thank you.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
Miriam's staying on with me for a few minutes.
Oh, okay, I'll stop the recording.
Yeah, thanks.